Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be providing a logarithmic regression curve update on Ethereum and talk about my expectations going into the end of this bear market into the next cycle. So if you're new to the channel and you want to show some support, please do leave a like and subscribe. So this logarithmic regression curve indicator will continuously increasing. This function basically models the bear market bottoms and projects them outwards to help us identify the accumulation phase going into the next few years. Now, I also have the closing price color coded based on the extension from this middle line. So we saw how in the January 2018 cycle peak, we were extended from the midline by about 3,000%. So that's what corresponds to these darker red colors. And when we're within this band, that's going to lead to these blue colors. So my expectation is that going into the bear market bottom, we will see the bottom within this regression curve. Again, it does range from $600 to $1,200, and the midline is at around $850. So I think somewhere within this range is going to be a very key accumulation phase going into the next cycle when Bitcoin experiences its halving. I do think that this is going to be looked back upon as a pretty phenomenal region to have accumulated Ethereum with a multi-year time horizon. Definitely not a few weeks or a few months. It could obviously experience quite the negative ROI over the next few weeks. However, over years, I do expect this to be looked back upon as a pretty great accumulation zone. So I want to talk about this cycle peak here and my kind of takeaway, because I think that it looks very similar to this really month-long pattern here in 2016. We had this first cycle high here. If I just toggle these indicators, we have this first cycle peak here in red. We had this first cycle peak here in red in April. We came back down to this yellow zone, a little bit of a drawdown. Again, we saw the similar thing, and then we came back up, formed a higher high on the weekly time frame. We took out this high, made a higher high. So same thing here, and then we basically consolidated and trended down into this logarithmic regression curve. So we're seeing a similar thing. This one's a little bit more steep in its drawdown, but eventually we did consolidate into this regression band, ultimately with the low being at the lower logarithmic band. And I do think that we are going to be seeing something similar going into the next few months. Now, again, this is a pretty wide range. So I do think that most likely $800 is going to be a very key level, not only because that represents the midline, but if we go back to the 2018 cycle peak, we can see how this dead cat bounce in April also corresponded to $800. So we have basically this all-time high being formed, the massive capitulation, and then the return to normal phase where we had a pretty significant dead cat bounce to this lower high. And if I extend this outwards, I do think this is going to provide pretty phenomenal support in the event that we're starting to move back down. And again, I do think this is going to hold extreme support on a weekly time base because, even if we're starting to wick below it, I think that would be short-lived. I think we would be, from a candle closing perspective, holding this as support, and really this would correspond to some sort of macro bottom in the event that we're starting to trend back down to this level. Now, obviously that could change. I could be wrong on this thesis, and the main takeaway here is that this is an accumulation range. It's somewhere I would personally start to expand my DCA strategy. I would start to increase the amount I'm accumulating. I do think that obviously Ethereum could have a capitulation down much lower, but in general, $800 will be looked back upon, in my opinion, as a very phenomenal region to accumulate for the long term. And that's just to say, if we get there, there is the possibility that does not happen. But based on this being the dead cat bounce from April of 2018, this is the midline of this logarithmic regression curve, and the fact that would represent a pretty significant drawdown from this all-time high, I think that is going to be a very good region to accumulate going into the next cycle. So in general, I do think that whenever we are in these darker blue colors, which is correspondent to within this regression band, I think in general, it's just a great region to accumulate. We've seen time and time again, the accumulation phase has basically been within these regression bands, and anywhere within it has been looked back upon as a great opportunity Now, I don't exactly believe that we are going to have basically a retest of the lower band, and then we're going to wick out and we're going to have a rerun to all-time highs. It's going to be an accumulation phase. It's going to be a sideways movement in which we need to build a base leading into the next cycle. Again, it's a longer term time frame. We're not looking at the next few weeks. We're taking a multi-year approach. And basically, I do believe Ethereum will ultimately rerun back up to the new all-time highs. But I think you got to give it a multi-month time consolidation before seeing something like that develop. And that could look something like this. Again, just an illustration, coming back into this regression band, going sideways for a few months, and then ultimately from there starting to come back up out of the band and into these new all-time highs. Now, obviously, this is not going to happen exactly like this, but just a general representation. We would go sideways into this band, consolidate for a while, and then from there build up. After a base is built up, we would kind of lead off into this new cycle, forming a new all-time high. So that's my general outlook going over into the next few years on Ethereum and analyzing this logarithmic regression curve. I hope you guys did enjoy. If you have any comments, suggestions, or feedback, please do leave those below. And as always, I will see you in the next one.